Hello, great. I think we can all hear each other. So, hi everyone. My name is Joy Mboya, and I'll be moderating this discussion, which I believe should be an exciting one. So, welcome to ResiliArt Kenya. This is a digital platform of virtual debates and discussions that involves stakeholders from the cultural and creative industries. And this is the very first discussion we're having, and we'll be looking at resilience and sustainability in the creative economy in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to first of all just mention that this event is hosted under the auspices of UNESCO and in partnership with the Department of Culture in the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage, in partnership also with the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO, as well as the Creative Economy Working Group, Twaweza Communications, Alliance Française, and the Godin Arts Center. But to start off, I'd like to welcome and invite and thank the UNESCO Director, the Regional Office for Eastern Africa, Ms. Anne-Therese Ndong Jata, to invite her to make some opening remarks. Karibu sana, Madam Ndong Jata.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Let me just start my video. Like I said earlier, I had a little bit of a problem with the internet, and I pray that it does not go off again. Good afternoon to all of you, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all the partners working with us. Let me start first and foremost by wishing you all a happy World Day of Cultural Diversity. We couldn't have chosen a better day for this event. Thank you for chairing, Madam Chair. I can see from your face that really this is where we find joy. It is an honor for me to welcome you to the ResiliArt Kenya debate, whose theme is crafting and reshaping the creative economy for resilience and sustainability in the context of COVID-19. On a day when the whole world celebrates the UN World Day for Cultural Diversity, for Dialogue and Development. And just for your information, you are not alone in this. The thoughts you've just expressed are really also one that others in other countries all over the world, and today in particular, we have 2 other countries in our region really engage in the same debate. As we all know, COVID-19 has become a real severe pandemic. Beyond the initial reflections and discussions, yes, there's been panic, but it doesn't seem from the narrative that it is going to go away very soon. And therefore, the need for us to continue to reflect together on how to mobilize differently to respond to what is anticipated as a new norm. But we know this has posed many serious challenges across the globe. It's really one that in our lifetime we've never heard or experienced before. The lockdown measures taken to contain the pandemic have hit all sectors of government and the culture in particular. And the reason why one would feel it even more within the culture sector is, as you all know, most of your, those engaged artists in the sector are more in the informal sector than in the formal sector, and therefore would not necessarily be part of a monthly salary. That therefore explains why when one says COVID-19 has hit the culture sector really hard, it is very, very much understandable. The crisis is critical for the cultural and creative sector due to the sudden and massive loss of revenue opportunities, which you have alluded to in your initial remark, which affects both large corporations as well as small creative entrepreneurs and freelance professionals. This has threatened the livelihoods of local communities and cultural professionals. Cultural institutions and facilities, including festivals, theaters, cinemas, are losing millions in revenue each day, and many have had to downsize. The pandemic has impacted the entire creative value chain: creation, production, distribution, and access, and considerably weakened the professional, social, economic status of artists and cultural professionals. This indeed, one could also say, is not just a health crisis or emergency. COVID-19 is indeed a cultural emergency. And with that, therefore, what are our thoughts? What can we think of innovatively to begin to make the adjustments that all other sectors have also to embark upon? It is clear that during difficult times such as these, the world in general, as a whole, and it's important to always look at it from the global picture. The world needs culture and creative arts more than ever. And that's why I started by saying just looking at your face tells us where joy is. Because no matter how hard hit artists may be, they can always be able to bring some sunshine. The music we've just listened to is so soothing. And so therefore, we know that the world needs culture and the creative arts more than ever before. The arts provide comfort, inspiration, and hope at a time of anxiety and uncertainty. Some of the artists you would have heard were very much mobilized in conveying the messages in different forms, be it through poetry or music or just drama. And so therefore, the world turns to you. In Kenya, the sector has registered massive loss of revenue as a result of abrupt cancellations of events, festivals, concerts, etc. Numerous artists are unable to make ends meet, much less produce new works of art during these strenuous times. But I would really say, rather than just lament about what COVID has created, let's become a little bit more innovative. Let's think positively, because when we look back, we never can move forward. But when we are able to begin to look at how to overcome challenges, it helps us probably to move ahead. And I believe if there's a message I want to leave, it's a message of hope, and hope that only you can create. Because over the years, challenges have hit different sectors of society, the culture sector, no doubt. But as I mentioned earlier, we look to culture. We look to the culture sector. We look to the artists to really begin to imagine or reimagine how to really continue during this period and this pandemic, which we have been told, I said from the narrative, it's not one that's going away too soon. So what do we do? And I hope this debate will reflect on what can be done for the recovery of the creative sector in the context where the COVID-19 pandemic remains a major threat to global health. Cultural activities that may soon resume must find ways of dealing with constraints that will have significant social and financial impacts. Therefore, providing space to discuss these challenges and collectively seek solutions with stakeholders drawn from various government agencies, civil society representing various subsectors in the creative economy, to make recommendations for the resilience of this sector is, in my view, crucial and vital at this point. This is precisely why UNESCO launched the ResiliArt movement, which aims to discuss the ramifications of COVID-19 on the creative economy, share information and support while building solidarity and resilience in the culture sector. It's one that, like I say, and I want to repeat, if there is a sector of the economy that can bounce back, it should be the culture sector, because this is the sector that is known first and foremost for innovativeness. So rather than really bury your heads into the sand thinking that the end has come, look at ways during your reflections to consider how to bounce back, and bounce back differently, because we are all supposed to face a new norm. We hope that through this ResiliArt Kenya debates, we can raise awareness of the far-reaching impact of the current confinement measures on the culture sector. Work closely with government, civil society organizations, and cultural practitioners and stakeholders would help to explore ways the sector can navigate this period economically, socially, emotionally, and mitigate the current crisis and forecast for a better future. As I close, I would like to applaud the President of Kenya and the government for recognizing the challenge creative practitioners are facing, and being one of the few, and I should really underscore this, very few African states to proactively release a work for play in the region of about 100 Kenyan shillings stimulus package for artists and actors and musicians, as a way of cushioning those in the creative industry during the period of COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe, like everything else, if we start appreciating the little efforts, it may help to amplify your voices and the need maybe to do more. But already by appreciating what the government has done, it's a way of also showing to the rest of the world that something can be done. Because while you're thinking of your own predicament, it's also important to consider your other colleagues elsewhere that may be going through worse times with no recognition from government. These and other similar efforts demonstrate an active and agile leadership that is ready to play its part in alleviating the challenges brought by this crisis. And Kenya so far is doing very well in this direction, not just in the culture sector. It is also my distinct pleasure to thank the partners of this program, as you have really referred to starting out, especially the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage. I'm sure the ministry will come with great ideas. You have a dynamic minister in the culture sector, and I'm sure she's also thinking hard and deep on what to do. There's the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO, there's Alliance Française, you have the Creative Economy Working Group, the Go Down Arts Center, and Twaweza Communications. I think all of you coming together, reflecting, would really bear fruit. For working towards the realization of this program, I am sure that I'm just excited that even the thought of coming together like this could really lead us to some solutions and best practices that we can share with others. We also want to greatly appreciate all our distinguished panelists for taking time to participate in today's webinar. I will stay on, as I said to Judy, I know there will be fun, there will be great ideas, just to learn, because for me, every occasion to listen to some other voice, to some other ideas, add to my own development. And I believe we need to be together to resolve the problems. We do not have the answers, but together we can find a solution. So I wish you all fruitful deliberation during this webinar. And should the internet connectivity stay on, I'll be with you for as long as I can. Thank you very much once again, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panelists I'm here listening. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
No, thank you very much indeed. That is the Director of the UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, Ms. Anne-Therese Ndong Jata, for those who might be joining us now. And thank you for setting the stage for us to have a discussion around the effects of this time and this moment on Kenya's creative economy. So I understand that we have 93 attendees at the moment, and some of us are on YouTube. And for those of you whose friends are not able to join us on Zoom, do encourage them to follow us on the YouTube channel as well. And then before I introduce the panelists, to just let you know that in the spirit of supporting artists and sharing what we do and make, the music that you heard in the beginning was guitar music that is an arrangement and performance by Manasseh Uzele, performing with Wandere Karimi, who is one of the panelists today, and Tom Olango, and we'd like to thank them for sharing that music with us. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our panelists, and we have discussants from various creative economy spheres. We have discussants coming from cultural policy, resource mobilization. We also have them coming from various subsectors of the creative economy, from music, from visual arts, from film, and we have expertise in intellectual property law as well. And I will introduce them briefly. And as I introduce you, I'll give you a chance to just say hello so that your little box will light up and the attendees can see who you are. So I'd start by introducing Dr. Kiprop Lagat, who is the Director in the Department of Culture in the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage.
Hello, everybody. Very pleased to join you this evening for this discussion. Thank you.
Karibu sana. We also have Wanderi Karimi, who is the Director of the Kenya Conservatoire of Music and also a musician in her own right.
Oh, it's nice to be with you tonight.
George Gashara, who is the Managing Partner at the HEVA Fund, is also with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see all of you. I'm happy to be here.
And also Maggie Otieno. Maggie is a sculptor and a creative entrepreneur.
Hello, everyone. Looking forward to the great discussions. Thank you.
Karibu Maggie. Martin Munywa is also with us. He's a filmmaker, and he's currently the chair of the Kenya Film and Television Professionals Association. Martin, are you there?
Yes, hi all. Nice to meet you and nice to be here.
Asante. Muthoni Drama Queen, a singer, a rapper, a drummer, and of course a leading Kenyan musician. Karibu sana.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And then we're also joined by Nelmo Newsong, who is a recording and performing artist and founder of the Mukuru Festival. Hello, Nelmo.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So welcome. So these wonderful 7 individuals are here to talk to us and talk with us, not only about how the pandemic has affected us as artists and as creative and cultural practitioners and organizations, but I think especially to share how we are being adaptive, how we are being resourceful, how we are being resilient and innovative in this time. You know, as they say, every cloud has a silver lining, and we hope that some of these resilient, adaptive, innovative ways will point the future for a more resilient sector for us after this storm subsides. And we'll get right down to it. We do know that we have, of course, comments and questions that will come as the conversation progresses. So I will try my best to juggle receiving those and sharing them back to the panel. This technology is something that we will master very quickly, trying to see how to speak to the camera, but also read the sidebar. And then we'll try and get a response to as many of these as we can. So do forgive us if we're not able to get to all of the questions. But we will begin now. And we hope to go until about 5:30. So we know that one of the immediate effects of the pandemic has been to really reduce the capacity of artists to earn incomes. With the partial lockdown, and this has now been going for about 2 months now, with the daily evening curfews, we know that it's very difficult to go out to seek work. It's very difficult to get work. And many of us are on a go slow. Many of us are on a pause. Some of us have even been forced to stop projects and prospects that we had. So I want us with the panelists to just do a quick reflection on what this looks like from their own experience, some immediate impacts on yourself and on your sector. And I'd like to start with Muthoni, the drama queen. Muthoni, I'd just like you to just share with us a primary income stream that for you was immediately affected by the current situation, and to tell us how severe it is and what the effect has been, how you're coping.
Thanks, Joy. So as a performer, one of the main income streams we have is live music performance, and touring is a really big part of that, because then that sort of gives you a block of predictable income. And a lot of the touring happens in Europe. So 2020 is cancelled for touring. They're predicting that touring and festivals don't come back in full effect until around fall of 2021. So next year, October, September is when things resume. So we're looking at more than 18 months of lack of that piece of income, touring income and live music income. And I think it's really difficult for artists across the board, right? So if you think that if Beyonce had a secret album she was going to drop this year and make a bunch of money on tour, she doesn't have it. So she's in exactly the same situation as a guitarist who plays 2 or 3 times gigs in a week at different venues or hotels or bars. So it's quite dire. It's comforting that everybody is in the same boat, but are we really? I think bigger artists have possibly more reserve, more savings, and so are able to bridge the gap in the short run. But ours isn't a short run. Ours is really ours is long term. I think, to be quite honest, live performances at scale, at the level we're used to, is probably going to be the very last thing that comes back on the plate after we go into a post-COVID world. So it's dire, but I think it's going to get much more dire.
Yeah, Muthoni, you mentioned that, of course, those artists who have had the opportunity to build up reserves, probably have something to fall back on temporarily for now.
Temporarily.
Temporarily. And I just want to know, just a quick follow-up question. Live performances and touring are a primary source of income for you. What percentage of your own incomes does this represent when you look at, generally?
From my musician income, it is about 60% of my primary income.
Right. Yeah, that's big. That's big. Martin, I'll put the next question to you, because you see that you also, of course, are a company. And so we're seeing that the pandemic, of course, is affecting artists as individuals, but also artist businesses, companies. Now, what have you had to do in terms of either downsizing or looking at expenditure at this time? What steps have you taken to keep the company going, your production company going?
Well, we have been faced with several challenges, and this one, honestly, I think anyone saw it coming. So let me speak for myself. I didn't see it coming in the sense that when you look at overall and the setup of the company and the way it's structured, you've got a container full of equipment sitting somewhere. You've got the core team, which has taken me almost 10 years to put together. And I mean, 10 years is going through over 50 different guys, finding that unique team where I can finally sleep at night knowing in the morning there'll be delivery, whether be it in terms of edits, in terms of sending someone to Accra to cover an event or something. So I finally felt I've gotten there. And for my age, someone who's looking towards retirement and trying to reduce on work hours and all, I said, yay, I'm finally getting there. Now I can, meet with George, Joy, and have coffee while work is ongoing. All this has changed. All this has changed. So here I am thinking, what do I give up first? Do I give up the team? That's a human resource which I rely on really heavily. And as I said, it's taken me 10 years to put together. Then I've got the space. Should I sell that equipment? But what if it unlocks in two months' time? But again, who is going to go and buy equipment worth millions of shillings like right now? So I've got equipment sitting down in space that I'm paying rental for. And then I've got the office where nobody is going there because of social distancing. And we've split ourselves in terms of all the editors are working from home and things like that. So we're working remotely, relying heavily on internet and online meetings like Zoom meetings. But we've had to reorganize. We've had to renegotiate rental space. We've had to talk with the team, and more than anything, which I think I need to bring out is, at the end of the day, we're all human with the same needs. Whether you're team leader or whether you're the cable pusher, we all strive for the basic needs. Yeah, that's the bottom line of the Maslow's pyramid. How do you sit down as a team and tell guys, listen, in 3 months' time, if we are still in this situation, we have to just break this family and hope it will be intact when things reopen up. So it's a very difficult space we find ourselves in from a company point of view. Then I can discuss film much later on.
Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. Because I think that we're seeing, of course, when you look at the effect of the pandemic in other countries as well, where it's even worse than here. If you're looking at the pandemic in the UK and in the US, some arts organizations have had to fold all together, a complete shutdown, a complete stoppage, I think, as you're saying, Martin, of a lifetime's work. And that is actually very, very serious indeed. But Maggie, I'd like to put this next question to you, Maggie Otieno, who is coming in from the visual arts side. I think, of course, one of the first things that we feel the pain of is the economic constraints that COVID-19 has brought. But apart from money, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that the moment of uncertainty, of course, has caused. Social isolation, when we cannot reach out, meet with people who give us security and comfort. Please describe the mood that you're seeing in the visual art sector in particular. What are you seeing in terms of just mental well-being, psychological health in the space that you work in?
Thanks, Joy. I think the pandemic has really hit the visual arts sector hard. And I think for a very long time as a visual artist, we've never been keeping reserves very well. And this kind of time is showing us that we really must start thinking about this. And I've just been taking a walk in some of the centers. I was at Masaimbili last week. And the place was really quiet. I found only 2 artists there, Mbuthia and another guy. And I've been to Masaimbili before, and it was vibrant, it was active, the artists were hanging out, and the life was there. And it was, I felt like it's kind of a ghost studio. Most of the artists were not there, and I was asking Mbuthia, where are the artists? Are they not coming anymore? And it was like, nothing to do here. People are just at home. And it made me really feel that for most of the visual artists, if your space is not shut down, you're either not able to go in there because you don't have the paints to work, you don't have people who can come to your spaces. And it's actually really a really sad state. And I was also just talking to Patrick Mukabi, and he was telling me that he was at Kuona Trust, and the atmosphere there was just very quiet. And just talking to some of my artist friends, I was talking to Chalo the other day, and we talked for so long. And I felt like he wanted just to talk to someone, because for us as visual artists, we like visiting each other. So that is not there anymore. And we are wondering, what is Patrick doing? What is Zoe doing? What is the other person doing? And it's not a really good state. Most artists are quiet. Some of them are not even answering phones. People are really quiet. And you can actually feel that there's nothing much going on.
Yeah, sometimes, and sometimes that silence can be worrying, because you wonder how people are actually doing inside. And there's a follow-up question here from Melissa Ome, who's a Kenyan student, a master's student at the Wits University in South Africa, asking around again, healthy mind. She says a healthy mind is a catalyst for optimism and innovative thinking. She's saying, is there any support towards overall well-being and mental health of Kenyan artists? Are you aware, Maggie, of anywhere where Kenyan artists in particular, creatives in particular, can go for this psychological, emotional support at this time?
That's a very interesting question, because I think for me personally, if I wanted to just relieve myself, I think I would visit an art studio, I would visit an artist, but those spaces are not open anymore, or the activities are really minimal. And it's maybe something that we need to think about, because there are so many young artists out there who are just asking us, how are you coping? How can you help me? And then I'm just looking at myself, I'm like, gosh, I also need help. So there are so many of us who need that mental health, that emotional help. But we've never been in a situation like this. So we've never put structures that can help us in times like this. So I think those are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. Because when an artist is not able to go to their studio, when they're not able to create, when we don't have money to buy their artworks, when there's no client who is coming, all that just comes in and you actually get depressed. And I know there are so many artists out there who are actually feeling that depression is actually kicking
in. Thank you, Maggie. I think Maggie is frozen, but we can keep going. Nelmo, are you there? Nelmo.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, Nelmo. Yeah. So you're sitting in a different space, but a space that is actually a very large feature of Nairobi, which is the informal settlements. And there's a lot of creativity and a lot of creative activity that happens in these spaces. And you yourself, of course, run a festival in the Mukuru settlements. I just wonder now, because already, the young people in those spaces, even before COVID, are economically disadvantaged. The opportunities for professional development in the creative economy is also very much constrained already. How are you seeing things for them now? Are things much worse? And in what ways? What is happening in that space?
Okay, in Mukuru, for example, and most informal settlements have been going around a lot, and since we have been interacting with that for quite a while. Can you hear me?
Yes, but a bit louder if you can.
Let me just hold the...
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge, because it's very different, like how Modoni was saying, for big art, it's easier because for them, they still make money on streams, they still make money on online concerts. It's very different here because for us, most of the artists here depend on small concerts and gigs that they get to at least earn some income from. And because I'm also an event organizer over here, it's hard because we know April was just the other day, and basically we could not hold any event. We could not be able to hold any showcase that at least artists can be able to earn something. And this has hit because then it means now it's completely it's different when Modoni says I cannot my income is 60%. Some of these artists, they depend on art. The little money they make on a weekend or once a month, that's how much they are able to survive on. It's very different from other artists. We have been trying to organize online concerts, which it's not as easy because it's all an issue of numbers. Because if it's an upcoming artist who doesn't have enough numbers, it's hard for them to even have someone getting to donate or send some money through the M-Pesa payments. So I think here it's total lockdown and shutdown on the creative industry on the side of Mukuru and also other, because we've been having conversation also with other artists around other slums. And basically it's a shutdown because we were also having a conversation with Masava. He runs an arts club in in South B, the Mukuru Art Club, and he was saying for them they hold monthly art exhibitions, but they can't do that now. So they're even finding ways to be able to look for other ways to be able to pay for their premises. So I think on such the smaller platforms for upcoming artists and artists in informal settlements, it's even harder for them on this time, which it's the same all across, mostly looking at our Kenyan music industry. I think it's when reality is hitting and people getting to understand how your online presence is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Now, George, Heaver Fund was very quick to carry out a survey of the effects of COVID-19 on the sector. And I think this is really an important step that was taken, because one of the challenges, of course, is to quickly understand the situation so that we can take the right solutions. Now, I know that the document is quite big, and there's actually a lot of interesting findings and observations within that report. But can you just give us a sense of some of the statistics, some of the information, some of the findings that surprised you in doing this survey on the effect of coronavirus on the sector?
Well, thank you, Joy, and thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Mudhoni, Nelmo, Martin, for in one way or another articulating the reality of this pandemic. For me, I sit in a place where I'm both an artist, but I'm also a resource manager for artists, and easily for the 40 companies that we are currently working with, we've been able to extend waivers, and some of those waivers are already costing our balance sheet. For every 21 days, we are losing more than 20 million shillings in revenues. And for a small company like ours, I don't know how much loss we can also sustain. My hope is that we will start reopening soon, so that then the degree of loss can be mitigated. However, we were happy that over 540 people were able to interact with our survey and with our data collection process. And so far, we are starting to see some things. And I'll just take a couple of interesting statistics here. First one being that this report confirms that it confirms the assumptions that we had. For many people who've been in the sector for more than 5 years, you realize a majority of actors, our peers, our friends, are independent, and they are not affiliated, and they are unregistered. So watu waiko peke yao and they are unaffiliated. And so we realized in our report over 60% of people are completely unaffiliated, like they're independent, and over 80% are unregistered. So even when we are looking for some sort of help, the question is, what is the immediate ecosystem? Another thing that we realized is that we indeed have a sector. Most of the respondents of our survey have been in the sector for more than 3 years. And also a bigger majority of them have been earning from the sector for more than 5 years. So we have a sector, and that was good to see. But if you look at all those statistics combined, if you've been in the sector for more than 3 years, but you're still unaffiliated and unregistered, so there are many gaps on how to build the ecosystem. We are worried, really. The picture that we start to see is that while many people say the first quarter, which is January, February, March, is low season, the impact of the corona pandemic in the low season is quite dire. I'll give you one example. Incomes for more than 70% of our people from across the value chain, they lost more than 500,000 shillings just in the first quarter. And they're projecting that if this pandemic goes into June, we are almost there, they lose us a further potential income of up to 700,000. And this is a ballpark figure that includes a range. So if you think about someone losing the potential income of about 1.2 million shillings, how do we recover from that? And that is intense. And why it is intense, the question is not just the lost income, but when you ask people about the future, people start to say that with the cancellations, with the refunds, with the fewer international travels, with the fewer funds, there are no new jobs. Because they were hoping that the opening will call new jobs, but jobs are looking more bleak. If you think about the people who have employees, 43% of our respondents had employees. 1 to 10 employees was a majority number. And of these people, most of them are in casual contracts. So we are talking about a whole cross-section of the people who work in the creative industries are casuals. That is more than 80% of, say, the workforce. So then we asked, what are you doing with the workers? A lot of them said that because of the increase of costs like transport, like masks, like whatever, like rent and low incomes, they're going to lay off majority of their employees. So we are seeing an already fragile group of people who work in the creative sector are going to face in the coming month more drastic action. And so to end at least the brief findings, we see that majority of the businesses and the workers indicated that the impact of COVID is between high and severe. And when we ask what is high, they said they've lost more than 15% to 50% of their income. And when we ask what is severe, they've lost more than 60% of their incomes. In normal business environments, if someone loses over 60% of their income, they close down. So the question is, we have groups of creative industry practitioners who have lost more than 60% of their income already. So are there matching facilities that provide relief? And what about those who have lost more than 20%? How do we help them not lose, like Martin said, their inventory, their key skills, their experience? And so these are some of the thoughts that this report offers. Finally, we try and create a framework to understand impact, because the impact is not uniform across all subsectors. And so we created this, what we call a framework that looks at several things. We look at whether the sector requires large gatherings to operate, whether the sector requires close human physical interaction, whether it is dependent on travel, whether it's dependent on public grants and expenditure, say government, NGOs, whether it depends on international logistics for it to be viable, and how the consumers are responding during the pandemic. And if you look at all these factors, we realize that some sectors like live music, theater, dance, DJ performances, live entertainment, weddings, event suppliers, museums, galleries, and cultural heritage practitioners are very highly exposed. And then the rest are in different categorization. So as we start to think about who's facing most pressure, who is in the severe end, who is in the moderate end, and who is in the low end. And so finally, there are those that are actually really enjoying this phase. And we also hope that those could be models on where we could pivot to in the short term as we start to support those who are highly affected. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, George. And again, thanks to Hiva for that. And I'm sure that there'll be other studies. Already just a more general study. I know that the government has put out the report on the impact of COVID on households. And we know that this is important to any economic sector because it is the households who are our markets. These are the spenders. And the effects on them, of course, are effects on us in the end as well. But I think just listening to, to just that very brief picture that the panelists have drawn so far of the impacts on them personally, on their sectors, on their businesses, and the research as well, it seems that the Kenyan creative economy, which has been steadily on a rise, what you describe as a nascent economy, a growing economy, a young economy, is really sitting at a point of peril, because some of these impacts are going to be very difficult to recover from. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of skill loss. When people cannot come back to pick up work in this particular sector, it takes us some steps back. But I know that the aim of this discussion is to also begin to discover some way forward, some solutions and some ideas, some innovative actions that people are being forced to take. Because if you think about it, we're now almost 2 months into the pandemic. And people don't sit around waiting for the car to run over them. Once they realize they can roll away, they roll out of the way. So we are finding that people are kind of rolling out of the way in some very interesting, through some very interesting actions. And I'd like us to sort of discuss this in two ways. One is to think about the public support, and by public I mean government support and government attention that is coming to the sector at this time, and then to segue into just the internal sector resilience and sector strategies for survival. And we start by looking at government. And of course, I think inevitably, this question of the 100 million Kenya shillings that the financial relief that His Excellency President Kenyatta gave to artists, of course, has engendered many debates. One could say that it is a double-edged sword in some respects. But before I invite Dr. Lagat to give us an overview of at least the aims of this, if I can call it a stimulus, from the perspective of government, from the perspective of the ministry, maybe I can ask Wanderi Karimi to just respond, give your own personal response, or even a response from your institution around what you think this gesture signifies, the gesture of giving a sum of relief to a sector that for a long time has not been given recognition or attention or even any serious consideration. Do you think it signifies anything? What is your thought, Wanderi?
So I think, first of all, thank you for the question. I think this is the first time that we've had something like this happen in this country. I think the last time we've had any kind of input from government was probably tax relief in the late 2000s. So this is a very significant gesture, and I think one of the things I have seen with the Conservatoire, for example, we serve a community of about 4,000 people. There's of course been that panic, but then immediately that announcement came, there was how do we innovatively go ahead and take advantage of that? So we've seen a lot of collaboration. The Department of Culture, where we are hosted, is the Kenya Cultural Center. That recording that you just had at the beginning was done as on the Kenya National Theatre stage, which of course is something that would not have happened before this time. So that collaboration and that idea of working with the people in the sector is something that we are grateful as members of the sector. I think the creativity that we are seeing also in how people are responding to this. We have a community orchestra that runs and with creativity with the young people, because of course we serve people who are mostly under the age of 30. So there's been a lot of push to go online, and they've been quite quite open to even having those conversations, which we would not have had before, because government now is a partner, not those guys who don't like. It's actually looking like the sector can now get a boost from that kind of collaboration with government.
No, thank you, Wanderi. Dr. Lagat, you've heard Wanderi call government a partner. She says government now is a partner. And perhaps from the perspective of the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage, you can give us a sense of how you saw this money making a difference to artists in this period, and particularly, responding against the very dramatic figures that the HIVA report, of course, has revealed, but also the descriptions of the kind of hardship, economic hardship, that everybody is falling into at the moment. Panelists, how did government see this making a difference? And then, is it a one-off gesture, or is there a plan to have a more systematic planned effort moving forward for the creative economy? I know I've got 3 questions there for you.
Okay, thank you, Joy. I think my fellow panelists have really painted a picture of how severely this COVID-19 has affected them. Indeed, this is a pandemic that has affected all the sectors of the economy. And most of you must be aware by now that the government instituted a raft of measures to cushion various sectors of the economy. There was a total tax relief for persons earning less than 24,000 Kenya shillings. Income tax relief was reduced from 30% to 25% for those earning more than 24,000 shillings. There are things like reduction of turnover tax from 3% to 1%, a reduction of VAT from 10% to 14%. At that juncture, this important sector that contributes 5, 6, 7% to the GDP was left out. And I think it was thus imperative that the cultural and creative industries are also taken into consideration. This is a sector that engages hundreds of thousands of the youth and artists in this country. And therefore, when the president made, on the 6th of April, when he announced the 100 million shilling stimulus package for artists, I think most of us were very excited because we knew that many of our young artists, as well as some of the experienced artists, were actually going through challenges. And therefore, we sat down as a ministry and we considered various options. But given that we have perhaps over 100,000 artists in this country, 100 million shillings would really have been a drop in the ocean. So a number of people expected cash transfers via M-Pesa, but we thought that that would not have had an impact really. And therefore, the work for pay program was thus proposed, which is something that we thought would target the most vulnerable artists in the society. And by helping them manage some of the adverse effects, we thought that that would be the best way of doing it, while helping us churn out messages on how to stay safe, while reinforcing some of the World Health Organization recommendations, as well as inspiring hope, empathizing with those who've been affected differently by this pandemic, as well as addressing some of the issues of mental health that is affecting a number of them. So I think that is how that initiative was crafted, and it was rolled out, or it was launched about 2 weeks ago by the Cabinet Secretary. An announcement was made yesterday by the Principal Secretary, basically rolling out the criteria on which through which artists are to apply for the funding. And it is funding that is targeted at all the domains of the cultural and creative industries. I think at this juncture, maybe what artists should do is to actually visit the website of the Sports Culture and Heritage Ministry. Basically, it is www.sportsheritage.go.ke to see what opportunities exist. And I want to assure you that this actually responds to some of the statistics that have been given to us by George Gashara. For instance, George says that 97% of the cultural and creative sector in this country has been affected. And I think we are addressing some of those challenges. And one of the most important outcomes of of Evers Fund survey is that 80% of artists are not registered anywhere. 61%, no, 80% are not registered with any government organization. 61% is not registered with any association. And I think this gives us a challenge because it puts us in a difficult position on how we can address some of the issues these artists are facing. And therefore, to me, I think it gives us an opportunity to address some of those gaps and come up with robust ways in which we can address it, because that way, once we have the statistics, once artists are registered, it becomes possible to address some of their sector-specific issues by knowing who exists, who does what. And I think government, without statistics, it becomes a problem for us to address some of those challenges. The other opportunity that gives us also is an opportunity to partner with the corporate sector as well as the civil society organizations. And I think, to me, that would be one of the ways to move forward this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lagat. And as you were speaking, the chat bar is alive. And maybe I can just share some of those comments and then see how, let's just spend a few minutes in this space, because I think one of the things that the financial relief that has come from government has done is to, if I can put it this way, unmask certain challenges that sit in the sector. And these are challenges of mechanisms and structures for disbursement. But then I think there's also ideological questions. So let me just share some of the comments that are coming. So some comments are saying that it seems to say that there seems to be a perceived weakness in the capacity of the actors in the creative economy to convene and organize themselves for collective action, so that they can make a case and then make a case and receive money. And then Dan Onyango, very specifically of the Hope Raisers, is wondering whether, and this was a question that he sent earlier, so this is the one I'll read, is wondering whether through this method of disbursing money and asking artists to use it to message around COVID-19, aren't artists then just being used as tools for government propaganda? Because this financial relief is being tied very specifically to generating messaging for COVID-19. And then I think that there's Tabu Susa, who has been following you as you were talking about the challenge of registries and trying to really identify artists. And let me just find his thing here very quickly. These things move too fast. Yeah, Tabu suggests that if there is not a proper registry, how about then working with the CMOs to some extent, working with local administration and chiefs, and the Nyumba Kumi activities to some extent to identify the artists. In other words, we can find different solutions to identifying who an artist is in order to ensure that the money is disbursed across a wide swathe of the sector. Let me just get some comments on this first, just from some of the other panelists. Martin, maybe can I hear just from you and then maybe hear from Muthoni before we come back to Dr. Lagat? Martin, are you there? Yeah. So again,
Yes.
we're speaking very specifically around the challenges that this has opened up. So I don't want us to go into the space of who should get, who should not get, but it has
Yes.
clearly opened up some challenges. What are those and how do we begin to mitigate them?
Well, I think most of the challenges have been addressed by the panelists. It seems like the challenges span across art, but what makes film sort of stand out in my from my experience is in film is you have multiple disciplines. You have the artists, you've got the musicians, you've got all these the actors. All these guys come together under one one production called a film production. So what I'm hearing is affecting everyone. Has all come to this one film production thing. As you said, I'll not go into details of the monies and funding and all that, but this is just food for thought before I pass the floor to everyone. Just listening to everyone speak and also having thoughts myself. When you look at classics like Charlie Chaplin or Mr. Bean, what you see in front of the camera is one artist, one fellow. And that's the guy we focused on, and that's the name, that's the brand we know. When you come behind camera, on that set, filming that one person are maybe 30 people across all these artistic disciplines we've talked about. What I'm seeing happening now one thing moving forward, what's going to change in this COVID time? Are we going to work in those large numbers? How can we remodel the whole filming thing? And I can bet that a lot of selfie-based equipment that does what we are doing now is about to end up on in the film market. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered you or jumped.
No, you
way ahead into how we're going to change, how are we going to mitigate this right now? What can we do immediately to make, since we cannot congregate in numbers, we cannot travel, we cannot cross borders, we cannot cross River Chania here. What are we going to do to keep us alive, keep our art alive, and make money in the process?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that we can alternate between the solution and responding very specifically to this. But I see again on the chat some comments that Maggie can probably speak to and add to, but so that we can then have Dr. Lagat respond to the challenge that they're facing in trying to identify and disburse money to vulnerable artists. So some of the questions I'm seeing on the chat are, how do visual artists who aren't muralists, how do those ones, because basically the work for pay program, you can see that somebody's going to do a mural that has a message, can probably make an application and stand a chance. But not all visual artists are doing that. So how do they benefit from this work for pay program? And then the other question that I'm seeing being asked around this is how do we define vulnerable artists? Because we've just heard that from an artist who might not seem vulnerable, a well-known performer like Muthoni is also very tightly squeezed. A film production company that has been operating for 10 years is really at the edge right now. So, and then you have, Nelmo has described how artists in the Mtaa, basically a large percentage of their money, once they don't have performances, that is the end of it. So everybody is vulnerable. So the question is, how do we decide who is vulnerable? How do we deal with those sectors that cannot message as this fund requires them to message at this particular point in time? Maggie, do you want to say anything to this on behalf of the visual artists? Because I know that sometimes the visual artists do get a raw deal in these discussions.
Yes, I'd like to say something because thank you, Dr. Lagat. When I was looking at the application for the monies, the way they were being dispersed, especially for the visual artists through National Museums of Kenya, one of the criteria was registered vulnerable visual artist groups. So immediately that's written there. A lot of us are on the side, yeah, because we are not registered as vulnerable visual artists, but we are all vulnerable, Joy. At this point in time, we are all vulnerable. So what we are asking as visual artists is that whatsoever the National Museum is going to do, because it's very specific, it's murals. And as somebody said, is it about government taking advantage of artists because they want messagings that are probably targeting young artists, you know? And I feel that when money like this is disbursed, what we are supposed, what the government should be doing, or what the sector should actually be looking at, is that what is the need of the artist? Even this vulnerable artist, what is their immediate need? Because I saw that they're targeting around 450 artists from across board, and we are so many artists, Joy. I think we are more than 10,000 visual artists. And I know maybe they can't feed into all that, but the question is making murals very key? Is that really what government wants visual artists to do? Because if you put us on a table, we will tell you what we want you to use that money for. And the key thing will not be to make a mural. Because once I've made that mural, you'll give me some money, I'll probably go and maybe pay rent or do something else. But then what else? Because I've seen someone, I think Kimani Wawanjiro was asking, how do we get out of that hole? That money is like something that's removing us out of that hole. But how many people are you removing from that hole? So I think to be really holistic, we need to sit down, yeah? Get key stakeholders and ask them, what is really your need? Because seriously, I don't think making murals right now is a great need for visual artists.
Okay, thank you. And I think that, of course, the purpose of this discussion is to begin to find and for all of us to hear other ways of trying to understand how to work with, I think, this very important gesture of a relief for the sector. Because I hope, and I think we all hope, that this will not be a one-off disbursement. And if indeed it does not end up becoming a one-off disbursement, then we need to think about how do we structure the mechanisms for disbursement in ways that respond to people's needs and that work for all of us. Dr. Lagat, I will give you a chance to probably just respond to some of the things that you've heard the artists say.
Okay, thank you, Joy. I think I'll respond to three key issues. The first one, I'll start by clarifying something that I think to me is a misconception. It is not that this funding is only targeting mural artists when we come to visual art. We have all the other categories of visual art: photography, cartoonists, mixed media artists. We have fashion and design, ceramics, drawings, amongst many others. So all of them will be given an opportunity to respond. The mural artists will only work to produce work with the National Museums of Kenya. The National Museums of Kenya is the facilitating institution, but the Department of Culture deals with all the other domains of visual art. The second question is with regard to vulnerability. I think that is the $6 million question in the room. However, we've also attempted to come up with a criteria on how artists could benefit. One, for instance, is you need to show us your income art in the last 6 months. Secondly, a statement of vulnerability. I know that may not be very tight-proof, but at least you need to demonstrate to us that you are vulnerable. I know there are artists, like comedians, for instance, who are engaged in other meaningful employment. So one ought not to be actively engaged in a different income-generating stream. And one other thing is you ought not to have been a beneficiary of any other government initiative targeting COVID-19 pandemic. So I think in that case, we have parameters that we will use. With regard to the issue that we are actually out there to use artists, benefit and churn out messages in support of WHO and government recommendations. I think that is not absolutely true, because for some of the works do not have to be directly related to COVID-19. You could produce, when we talk of the world, for instance, the 1984 all-time hit, it specifically does not address the famine in Ethiopia at that time, but it has continued to be an evergreen song. So the chances are some of the music, some of the artworks that will be produced during this period could be bestsellers, for instance. That's the wrong word. And the artists will continue from benefiting from IP and copyrights beyond this period. We hope that by these works online, by allowing some of the, maybe paintings, for instance, to be exhibited, it could be in a biennale somewhere after COVID. If this work is sold, the artist will still benefit. Then finally, I know there's an issue on why it is the government disbursing this funding and not a private organization, CMO, or collective of artists. The main reason is this funding has come from the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, and they have a criteria. That funding can only be accessed by professional sports people, sports organizations, and government of Kenya entities. So unless the fund regulations are revised, then I think at the moment it becomes difficult for CMOs to apply for that money, for an arts collective to apply for that money. But because of the challenges that we've encountered during this process, I think it also calls for a review of the sports fund regulations in order that it responds more robustly to the needs of the cultural and creative industry players.
Okay. Thank you. And I think that, again, as I indicated at the beginning, this is not the space to exhaust this which is already happening out of this particular forum, and we do need to keep it going. But the idea was to begin to expose some of those challenges and to think about how we build strategies for recovery and for resilience. So I will segue, if you will allow me, in the last minutes that we have left, into talking about some of the strategies that we are beginning to see taken by practitioners in the sector around that show agility, adaptiveness, resourcefulness, innovation as they try to survive economically and psychologically. And of course, this is being played out predominantly in the digital space. Along the sidebar, and I think that we'll be able to save all of the comments that are coming out of the sidebar, and then perhaps the forum will be able to share these more generally with all of the participants, because there's some, I think, very useful inputs that are being made, and we cannot cover them all. So thank you for all of those. We are seeing them and we are noting them. But I think that to just move into this space of trying to understand how we will recover and where the opportunity sits, and we've picked up some of the challenges, because opportunity also sits in a challenge. Wanderi Karimi, can I ask you to, because you're an IP lawyer,
yeah.
And digital has become a lifeline of sorts. You've seen, particularly musicians, beginning to work this space and to try and see how it is a space that, of course, is bringing light and cheer to our hearts, but also hopefully trying to see how they can monetize in this time of COVID as well. What springs to mind for you as an IP, with your IP hat on now, around this space becoming more alive, and what sorts of things should we be aware of as practitioners in the creative economy moving forward?
Thanks, Jeff, for the question. So in IP, a lot of people right now are just trying to survive, and I think songs that bring, I'll tell you, like from the musicians that I know are doing a lot of covers and things. So you will not be able to monetize, for example, your covers if you put them up on YouTube. But creating content that is, of course, original is really important, because then only with original content will you be able on all platforms to make any revenue in that sense. But also the other thing that and I think the concern has been brought out even in the question is I think there needs to be a clear guideline on what that IP, or whatever IP will be. What happens to the IP for the people who participate in this program? For the conservatoire, a lot of one of the things that one of our partners has done is that they're giving free, so they make music available for free for the day, because to bring light. So those are some of the things also that people might decide to go the copyleft direction, which is Creative Commons, and allowing people to use the music not necessarily for profit, but to share in the music, as you were saying, that is bringing light, but with the intention that when we get out of this, that the traction that you have gathered with this, with a very clear whatever it is you're putting out online, on whether it is a cover or not, that you put that it is a cover, so that you don't get caught up, of course, in those kinds of conflicts that we see around IP, because you when you have conflicts over who is going to make what, then it doesn't matter how much money the government gives us. You're going to be in a space where you're in conflict for the work that you created, and you create another problem that you shouldn't be dealing with. So clarity in who owns what, whether the program is for government or not, and being able to create content that you decide whether you're going to get money out of it, or also share with the world, and then use that as your freemium to make some money going forward.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, you do reinforce, or something that I see again on the chat bar from June Gashui, who is also an IP lawyer, who is saying that the issue of IP is not on any of the documentation that has been shared so far to artists around their own submissions. So again, that I think that's something that needs to be picked up by those who are calling in for submissions, but also the creatives themselves to be aware of the kinds of protections that they need to be thinking about in this regard at this time. Mudhoni, so now, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, there's currently a bill in Parliament to get the IP. This is KIPI, this is patent, trademark, copyright. So there is a process right now. We just amended the current Copyright Act, but then there is a move to have the bill consolidate all these acts together, so that you can have one place. So there is movement to that government is making towards making some of these places accessible. And of course, there is a copyright tribunal where people, if they do have disputes, they can bring them to the copyright tribunal, which I sit on. And you can get that information off the judiciary website.
Thank you, Wanderi. So Mudhoni, as we sort of come to close to wrapping up, maybe you can lift us up a little bit by sharing some of the things that you think are exciting opportunities, new ways, different ways, expanded opportunities for the use of the online, of the digital, by artists, by musicians, or any other sorts of artists that you're seeing, and what that might flag for the future.
Thanks, Joy. So I have a very, I know you want me to lift you up, but I have a very mixed approach to this. I think the internet is really working for those who have access, and for audiences that have access. I think now more than ever, the disparities that naturally exist within the entertainment industry, particularly music, now are becoming very, very apparent. I mean, like Nelmo just said a few minutes ago, whereas, I have access to gear and lighting and whatever I need to put on a production, the luxury of my home, Majority of artists don't have that. And so I know there's this thing that we want to feel good, like, man, the internet is going to be the next frontier. I just want to say that as much as it is the next frontier, it's going to leave a lot of people behind unless there's a deliberate sort of, there's cognition at a policy level that internet must now become a basic and free good, because it's a question of access to information. And I know it sounds radical, but I don't know what really is radical about making a version of internet accessible. And I know there's private players, people like Brick, who, you know, work to make the internet more and more accessible for lower units at a community level, but that's just a real thing. What the internet has done, at least for musicians, and I want to say again in actor, musicians, music is always the lowest hanging fruit. So we are always the first ones to respond quickly. It's the easiest, really it's the easiest of the arts. As difficult as it is, it really is the easiest. And I think that what it's allowed us to do is to create. So we who have access, have been able to continue and perhaps even unlock a new degree of creativity. So because it's DIY, you have to figure it out. So whether you're going live, how to make your live distinguish itself from the other person's going live, how to work remotely with other creatives, other music stars. So it's been an intensely creative period of time for musicians. And I mean this globally, but I would like to put a very big caveat there, that this thing is a demonstration of privilege. Majority of artists cannot do this. Sculptors just can't get onto the internet and show you their sculpting for the next 3 months before they end up with a piece. So whereas the internet is, at the same time, I've also, you know, been working with people who work in gaming engines and set designers, and just seeing how far we can push the tech and how we are about to flip this thing as far as live music production is concerned. But it's really genuinely, it is a very poor measure of a solution for the creative sector at large. And even for musicians, it's a very poor measure. It's only good for those who can afford it and for audiences that can afford it. Now, I think it's really great that in this conversation, we have so many industry leaders and also government. It's a really important thing that as government is thinking now, I think the government has gotten 106 billion loan from the World Bank. I think the understanding here is because this thing is long view, there is no recovery that is not going to require a number of years. I'm really grateful that we have the beginning, 100 million, and I even really like this idea of work for pay. I think it's the only, because Kenya is Kenya, I think it's genuinely the only verifiable mechanism for people to do some work and get some pay. It obviously ignores the basics, which is between now and when I make the work, how do I pay my rent? And how do I eat? You know, how do I eat tonight before I make the mural in a week from now? So there's this problem. But I think that we have to have a longer view, Director Lagat. There has to be, in the same way government is now thinking, what is the 18-month support that needs to be given, for example, to farming, right? How do you support this thing for 18 months before it's able to get back on its feet? There has to be a question, how do you support creativity? And not so much support as much as stimulate. So you need to drop a whole lot over a period of time to stimulate, to keep artists creating, but there also has to be a supply stimulus, right? So if artists are creating all these amazing works, but people are too broke to buy airtime to watch your amazing concert that you worked on for 3 months, it's 0.0. So I think there's a question about the demand. So this stimulus, I really see it as a demand stimulus, and I love it. It's a great place to start. But there has to be thinking about also the supply on the, so you've solved for supply in the interim. Now you need to think about demand. How do we get the demand to be, up and going? And then we also have to have a longer view. So I'm sorry, Joy, it's not as uplifting as you'd like it to be, but I do think that there is a true opportunity here for innovation. All of us are going to have to redesign this thing. We're going to have to bring products to the market for the consumers who can still afford. I think there's also the understanding of now we are on a global scale. So I've seen a lot of available, now just being like, oh yeah, I'd like to read that script. We work on this sketch together. There's a genuine feeling for, okay, let's work. And I think a lot of that has to do with, for the first time in months, finding you're not running off on your whatever project. So that's really great. And the last point I want to make in this statement, I want to say this to Martin and to companies. I'm going to sound like a capitalist right now, but I'm going to say in every crisis, there's plenty of money that's walking around. It's the nature of capitalists. There's a lot of people who have money. I know we've been approached already twice. Do you need some money? Do you want us to invest in the business? Are you ready to? So I would say that June is upon us. So first get your tax house in order, get your returns in order, make a dope swanky presentation and start and actively put you out there. There is a lot of venture capital. There's a lot of capitalists who are looking to take over people's businesses that are going to be crashing. The logic there is wait, desperate. So I would hope that you don't play desperate, Martin, but maybe to think strategically about taking on equity partners, which may be a bit uncomfortable in the interim, especially when you have a super team that you took 10 years to build, So maybe the business is going to have to take some L's to maintain your super team because you can't lose your resource. You're never going to get it back. But then on the other side, aggressively looking for ways to bring capital in. And especially if the artworks have been good businesses. If your business has been a good, viable business over the years, there's a lot of venture capital that's walking around trying to, buy your entity at a song. If your entity is great, they won't buy it at a song. They will just end up putting some money in. That's me. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Muthoni. And I think you bring us to sort of a good end. We're now sitting at 5:33, and I know that we had said we'd finish by 5:30. I think the good news for folks is that this ResiliArt Forum is just the first one, and the idea is for these conversations to continue. Organizers of this particular forum will be letting you know within the coming month there will be another discussion. But just to summarize some of the issues, it seems, because I think, Muthoni, you did lift. I think everybody lifted because for me, where you identify a problem, that is the first step to a solution. And I think that we have clearly articulated certain things. And if I can just repeat them, I think from the very beginning, one of the things we talked about, a sector that is challenged to build reserves. If you don't have a safety net, when the big wind comes, you're in trouble. So that is something to think about. I think we also talked about a sector that does not have social and emotional support in a time of crisis. Where are these spaces and how can we put this as part of the structure? We also then recognize a solidity around choice, collective action, and even mechanisms of receiving and distributing relief money. The other thing that seems to have come up is just that we are challenged to define artists and creative work, and therefore to identify them. And I think this comes back to the whole question of policy. There's a whole statute around the status of the artist and the definition of the artist, which I think it's time the Kenya government now seriously took on board and began to define its sector. The other thing that has come up is a serious review of a source of resource for the sector, which is the Sports, Arts and Social Protection Fund, which in its very structure completely disables the ability of the sector to receive money. So that is very weird. How do you have arts within there, and yet within the way that is structured, you cannot receive the money? So that is a problem. But then the other things we've recognized that even as we've been forced to come digital access is not equal. And that we need to really think as a government, as a society, about digital being a public free good for everybody, because that is the future and that is the way that we are moving. And then I think finally we talked about the fact that this is about the long view. This is not about now. In a crisis, there's the immediate action, and then there is trying to get out of it. And these conversations are part of trying to get out of it. So I think that we've identified the beginning of some of the process that are part of this moving forward. And to close, I just like each panelist to sort of say, what do you think presses you first? Where do you think, what difference would you like to see in the sector post-COVID? Just very briefly, one word or a phrase, and what action do you think needs to be taken to realize this? Because this is something that we'd ask the panelists to prepare. Just so we'll just take it through, and I'll start with Maggie, if Maggie's still with us.
I think for me, just hearing what people have been saying, and especially Dr. Lagat, I think for me, I'd just like to encourage artists to register, because government doesn't recognize individual artists working in their own studios. So I would like the relevant institutions to just take this registration online, so that we can see how to work effectively.
So a recognition of artists in some way, so that,
yes.
Yeah. Martin Munywa. Is Martin with us?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute my audio. There we go. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a very healthy discussion. I think I've learned a lot. I liked Mudhoni's reference to the DIY, just what I referred to earlier, that we'll end up being self-fulfilled makers, for lack of a better word. And if that's the case moving forward post-COVID, what I would like to see is some energy put into video on demand platforms with instant monetization. And I'm sure there's a way that this can be done. So if someone posts his 3-minute clip or something, they get instant returns. And this is somewhere where you can see actually government work in terms of policy come together with some form of funds that sit somewhere, respond to the instant monetization of the clips that go online. And I know the money there's a lot of money to be made back.
Thank you.
I don't know if that formula.
No, that's good. Nelmo, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
For me, I just think wholesomely, we need to find ways and working with the government to be able to just make sure we grow the creative sector. Because the truth is, I think it's only now that we're having these kind of discussions because the COVID is here. And, initially, it seemed like artists were all okay before the whole thing happened. And the sector, we have not felt that kind of support. And if you look at this, if you compare with the other developed countries, there have been more support on artists and not deciding you're doing COVID work, you're not doing COVID work, but respecting artist work, because if people will be artists despite this. And moving forward, I think the most important thing is that just have an integrated way of moving forward, supporting and putting mechanism, not even supporting. The 100M, I don't think it's anything that, I don't think it will even make such impact if only systems were put in place to make sure that artists get to earn from their work, and there is as much exposure to artist work for them to be able to make sure that they earn. That's all I'll say now.
Thank you. Wanderi.
For us, collaboration for sure is something that we've seen works. I think not just with the people here, I mean government, but people within the sector and even internationally. I think one of when I speak to one of our friends with Dance into Space, a lot of us are doing our thing all in our little spaces. But if we get together, like what Hiva has been able to do with their report, what the Go Down is doing with their spaces, if we collaborate, we'll be able to have these conversations with more force, and the ideas in the room will definitely make whatever it is that we decide will be our new normal a much better space, just not only for the creatives, but even for our audiences, because we do have a responsibility to them too.
Thank you. George Gashara?
Yes,
George?
thank you. Thank you, Joy. I'm listening to all these conversations, and I am inspired that we're coming to more or less very clear area of agreement. The question is whether we are able to take them forward and whether we're able to exploit this crisis and not let it go to waste by fixing some of these things that we've complained about for quite a while. And I'm glad that we have good people at the ministry who are willing to push the envelope right now. I'd like to say three things that from where I sit are the things that I'm taking on. The first thing is support for cultural and creative businesses. This is something that we've done before, and we continue to create a model around which to support businesses technically and also financially. So we've requested our investors and our board to allow us to use the resources that we already have to on-lend in better terms to the creative industries. So in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're able to get the relevant approvals, we'll be able to announce a business rescue facility for businesses, not for individuals. And we hope that we can match what the government has put out, so that at least we can make our own contributions for creative businesses. So that then we don't just ask, but we also can put a contribution. The second thing that I'd like to say is that we are very excited about the move that the government has had, all factors held constant. It's one of the few stimulus projects that is in the continent. So that's quite something. And we want to appreciate that, all factors held constant. But it also is important for people who have access to networks, to conversations, to start creating other solutions, because this is how our sector has been. We've never only relied on government. We always save ourselves despite government. So this is also time for us to support initiatives. I've spoken June Gashui, I've spoken to Danda, I've spoken to Eric Wainaina, I've spoken to a lot of leading lights in the country who are thinking about creating a project here, a stimulus there. And so as HIVA, we are offering our staff and our resources, the non-financial resources, our networks, to help put together and support these initiatives so that there can be something that we match, because the creative sector has always sustained itself. But now it's time to take the radical decisions to stabilize our sector representation, and so on and so forth. Finally, and what is important is that in the next month or so, we'll see every other sector coming together, whether it's tourism, whether it's agriculture, coming together and saying these are the economic recovery priorities for us. I've been in conversations where the tourism people are about X, the transport people, the aviation people. It's time for us to consider what is our priority raft of legal, fiscal, administrative recommendations that we can say this would help a big cross-section of artists if implemented, so that as the Uhuru government looks to support the reopening of economy, that we are on the table. Unfortunately, many times we are not cohesive or consistent. And so I am happy to contribute to any conversation that brings together that kind of knowledge and to push it forward. But
Okay,
most
George,
importantly,
I'm going to wrap you up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. Dr. Lagat. Dr. Lagat? Have we lost him?
He's muted.
Dr. Lagat, you're muted.
Okay, I think I'm
There
okay.
you go. Yes.
I think I'll vote for enhanced collaboration and partnerships between the different players in the sector with a view to crafting and reshaping the cultural and creative industries going forward. And perhaps the last, towards that end, the ministry is very open to continue engaging with the sector. And I'm very proud to say that in the last couple of months, we've had very robust engagements across the board. Then finally, having having identified registration as one of the major challenges, I want to inform these panelists that when the cabinet secretary was unveiling this stimulus program, she actually issued a directive that for the next 3 months, the Department of Culture registers artists and cultural practitioners free of charge as we look for other innovative ways to reach out all the artists.
So thank you all very much indeed. I'd like to thank the panelists. Thank you, Mudhoni, who kickstarted this end conversation and ideas. Thank you very much, Dr. Lagat, George, Maggie, Martin, Nell Moore, Wanderi, and who else have I left out? I think that's all of you. Just to let you know that the next ResiliArt is programmed for to come in the next month, so look out for it. And to thank UNESCO for starting this platform, and of course to thank all of the partners who have joined in. But thank you all of the attendees also for coming on board. Somebody has said that they hope that the chat bar on the side will be made available to all of the attendees. I'm sure they will try to do that because there's been some wonderful discussions also happening on the side as well. So asanteni, thank you all very much. This is just the beginning. We will keep the conversations going. Thank you and goodbye. Hasita, are you there? Yes, just stay on and just do a wrap up. Oh, you've done it already. Oh, fantastic. I just see that it's still all on. Okay. Okay.
That was dope, Karen.
Well done, everybody. That was great.
Good. So we all alone again, or we have audience?
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff.
I think we have some audience members still.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Oh, you still do.
Perhaps we can ask the audience to
Participants
kindly
still-
allow the panel to debrief.
Yes.
Audience, if you're there, kindly exit and allow the panel to debrief.
I see David Moravi is still here.
Maybe I think it's just
Secret
listening. Yeah.
panelists.
Or keep them.
Tell David Moretti to go home now.
They are not voting.
Emeritus
Yes, the shadow panelist. Is it alone? I mean, how does it look now?
There's still 25.
Oh. So what do we want to do, folks? I think I just wanted to say thank you and to see whether there was
I'm going to remove the attendees. Okay.
Yes, okay, thank you.
To you all, have a wonderful evening, attendees. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And you can already watch the video on the YouTube channel. It's there.
Yeah, they're slowly leaving one by one. We got 7, 6, so it's coming. They are leaving one by one. We're at 5 now.
Okay, almost there. Bonsoir, Rosine.
Okay, il y a 12. Okay, we're nearly there.
Who would imagine that you'd still have the people who leave the party last?
Yeah, exactly. There are always people who leave the party last. They have to be pushed. Like
But
you.
it's a good sign. It's a good sign, guys.
Okay, wonderful. Well done, everybody.
Give them each a bottle
Joy
and ask
and
them to
all the
drink.
panelists. That was fantastic. Well
Thank you
done.
all. No, thank you all.
It really was. And I think, I think it's really important that, everyone's given a chance, especially the attendees, given a chance to voice something that, they feel that they can be heard, they can be, I know that we're not able to answer everybody's, questions or even acknowledge everyone's comments, but it's important that there's that chat there that people can, exchange on.
In fact,
So
I don't know, Hazita, whether you'll be able to extract the chat and share it.
Yes. So what I said is that, there was a question about sharing. So now that we got everybody registered, what we'll do is we'll extract the chat and then, sort of edit it a bit just to make sure that, it's clean. And then we'll share it with all the people who registered.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Okay, quick question.
Yes, Prof.
First of all, guys, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I enjoyed every single moment of the 2 hours. It was really, really good. The ideas came out very, very well, very strong. And the moderation by Joy was perfect.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, so, you guys, the ideas, I was really with you through and through. I enjoyed every single word. And I'm just wondering now, because when we do live transmission, streaming, you have it like for what, 24 hours?
What, on the YouTube channel?
On the YouTube, or it's there for...
It will stay there.
Oh, okay, so it's not limited.
Download it, no. So we can download it, and if you want it, we can edit it.
Yeah,
it
I was
there.
hoping that.
It will be available.
Okay, I was hoping that we could actually also put it up on the Wabunifu Creative Economy Working Group platform for other people that actually come there for other stuff. So maybe we work towards that.
Yeah.
Yes, good idea.
It was excellent.
It was run away. I'm at the office and I have to commute.
Yes.
Asanteni. And thank you for the invitation and thank you for a great conversation. Tuendele.
Thank you so much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the panelists. It's been great. It's been fantastic. Yeah. And thanks to Anderi for the music.
Yes. Anderi is still with us.
And Maggie's power kept going and she's still here. God bless you, Maggie.
I'm still hotspotting.
For a moment, I thought we were going to lose her.
Thank you. No, in fact, messages saying, can she be private? Because then when she goes, she's gone. But yeah, on behalf of UNESCO, this has been excellent. I think we had about 115 participants on Zoom and another 50 participants on YouTube. I think that is more than we could have asked for. So really excellent, and they were there throughout.
Yeah.
So really excellent conversation, and the chats I couldn't keep up. Really, I couldn't keep up. So I think it was fantastic. Thank you all.
Thank you, UNESCO. This is really nice.
Yeah. Now
Thanks for inviting us. On to the next one. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wanderi.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Do we still have Martin? Thanks, Martin.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
yes.
No, thank you again for the interventions.
Karibu sana.
Yeah, and let me also just say that if for any of you who is inspired to do like 300 words, as a result of today, we can actually carry that as on the blog post under Wabunifu. So if you're feeling inspired and you want to put down 300, 400 words or 200 words, that would be great. And I also suspect that so that we keep the discussion going in different spaces.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, great.
No, good.
Good to see you all. And
Asante.
You,
for the next.
Martin, with your beard. I don't remember that beard.
I stopped shaving on 17th March
Oh, I
when Uhuru announced.
Everybody's growing a beard.
So I said I'm going to stop shaving, and I will take my picture when the lockdown is open. I take that, so I have that landmark to show my grandchildren and say, once upon a time.
Okay, tell me, sorry, Martin, I see that you're recording. Is that a video recording you get or an audio?
No, I'm not recording.
I'm recording something right now. Once I'm done, I will check. This is the first time I'm doing it actually.
Yeah, so I just video and audio, which it'd be good to know so that we know for future ones how to go about it.
Right.
Okay, can you have my email address or my WhatsApp? Once I'm done here, I will stop the recording. I will check and then I'll let you know.
Okay, so what's your WhatsApp, Martin?
0733.
Yes.
22.
Yes.
0
yes.
888.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's the same number I chat with Dion. Yeah.